in plain English, alignment to me is expectations communicated, because uncommunicated expectations are always unmet expectations. So communicating expectations and holding everyone accountable the same across the board.
And that word accountable is not a bad word.
Absolutely not. Accountability is kindness to me from a leadership perspective. It's kindness. It's letting people know here's what we're all doing and we're all accountable in the same way.
Many people want to be leaders. Fewer understand what it really means to lead people well. So what separates the two? Welcome to the Lead with Purpose podcast with your host, Merv Jerset. Each week, you'll hear honest conversations with leaders who have been in the trenches and have stories to tell. They'll share their practical wisdom to help cut through the noise and get to the heart of leadership. So let's get started.
Hey, welcome to Lead with Purpose, where we help up-and-coming leaders stop managing tasks and start leading people. So have you ever been on a team where everyone was working hard, but somehow everyone seemed to be rowing in different directions? Meetings were productive, perhaps, but nothing changed. People were busy. Priorities kept shifting. Accountability felt like, someone was pointing a finger instead of having your own things. But here's the truth. What I've learned from my own consulting is that most organizations don't have a motivation problem. They have an alignment problem. And today's guest has spent decades helping organizations solve exactly that challenge. Shelley Davis Boyd is the creator of the Aligned Leader Lens and the Civility Code, and she helps leaders build organizations to be rooted in trust, clarity, accountability, and develop a healthy culture. So if you've ever wondered how ordinary leaders, not just CEOs, by the way, can create extraordinary teams, this conversation is for you. And Shelley, my friend, longtime friend, welcome to Lead with Purpose.
Thank you, Merv. I'm so glad to be on, and it's so good to see you after all these years.
It's been a few years since we were in the same, I think it was called Yawn Patrol. What were we thinking? That club that it's 6:30 in the morning.
Exactly. But we're better for it, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Hey, before we get started, can you give our audience kind of you're a Toastmaster now, so a 2 to 3 minute summary of your journey to arrive at your focus now on alignment and clarity and accountability?
Absolutely. So it's funny. I did start doing this work a couple decades ago, which I feel like I'm still 29. So that's a little bit,
You are. You look
a little bit of
29.
a little juxtaposition there. But, I like to share my personal story. I was a teen mom. And so I had my oldest when I was 19. He literally came to college with me at nights, weekends, while I was working full time to support him. And I got my first executive job in my 20s, and I had no idea what I was doing, like zero idea, other than, I knew the organization, but I didn't know how to lead people. And so I made a lot of trial and errors, learned through some discomfort, and decided that, the unwritten rules of the workplace are something that we should be sharing with everyone. We teach people how to come in and do their job, like their technical skills, but we don't teach them how to operate in an organization from a human standpoint. And so I started doing this work to unlock that for other people like me who, were smart and driven, but didn't know how the heck to sit down and have a business meal with someone, or how to give feedback or receive feedback. And so that's why I got into this work, because I know that it is the foundation of success. It's not just what we do from our day to day, but how we are interacting with our coworkers, because we spend more time with the people we work with than oftentimes the people we love the most.
That's
And so
true.
how can we make that a place where we can be accountable and respectful at the same time? So I like to tell people I help organizations solve the problems that keep leaders up at night, right? The communication breakdowns, the accountability gaps, the day-to-day behaviors that impact culture.
What's interesting is, as you were talking, and I did not know this part of you, even though you and I have known each other for a while, but you were speaking my language. Can I share something with you? Look at
Yes.
this book.
Oh, yes.
Yes, it's my a book I wrote. It's called Lead Smarter, Not Harder. And exactly what you said. We teach the technical skills, the process skills, all of those skills, but we forget to teach leaders how to be leaders, how to interact with people. So that's it.
Yeah,
Thank you. I think this is going to be, can I use the word an aligned conversation?
I would love that.
Well, speaking of that, in my own leadership consulting, largely around IT project management, I work with organizations to build and I've termed this disciplined organizational alignment. And we hear that word a lot, the word alignment. How do
hmm
you, Shelley, define it in plain English for our audience?
In plain English, alignment to me is expectations communicated because uncommunicated expectations are always unmet expectations. So communicating expectations and holding everyone accountable the same across the board.
And that word accountable is not a bad word.
Absolutely not. Accountability is kindness to me from a leadership perspective. It's kindness. It's letting people know here's what we're all doing and we're all accountable in the same way.
Yeah. So, how do leaders actually create that accountability without perhaps putting in that negative connotation with that word?
Yeah, I think the thing that I see the most, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this. Oftentimes leaders know that there are culture issues, but they don't see their contribution to it.
Yes.
So the first thing is leaders have to be self-aware enough to know that I'm contributing one way or the other, whether I think I am or I'm not, what through what I say or what I don't say. And once we can get this as an organizational thing that we're dealing with and not a these people thing, then we can really start making some differences.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because to me, accountability in my way of actually seeing it come to fruition was I always kept my office door open. And I didn't care
Yes,
if you were the receptionist or the janitor or my boss. You could come in anytime and we could discuss. And if you didn't agree with something that we were doing, let's have that conversation. Let's not just kind of
absolutely.
let it float out there with without without having that conversation. So no, I agree with you 100%.
That
Um,
brings up an interesting point to me that I was thinking. So when you said let the conversations happen,
yeah.
oftentimes people take feedback so personally, where feedback is just data. It's just somebody's opinion, the way that they experience something. And if we can be objective about that as leaders, that also helps us have those open door policies.
Well, and then you used the word, I think earlier, I'm trying to think, was it self-realization or self-understand or something along those lines? What you said is exactly right, but sometimes we're not aware of how we're giving it that. We're giving the correct message. It's the tone and the demeanor that we offer. Sometimes we're giving it incorrectly, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone's heard the statistics, of body language versus what people actually take from your message, from your words. We are
Yeah.
communicating all the time through everything we do and don't do, through everything we say and don't say. And you can have a message and have the wrong tone or roll your eyes or have, you know, defensive body language, and that's what people are going to pick up on.
Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed this, but in my own consulting, sometimes I'll work with an organization and it's almost as though the leaders confuse their frantic activity with alignment. Have you ever
Yes.
ever seen that?
Absolutely. James Clear talks about that in his book, The Atomic Habits. He calls it motion versus action. So
Yeah.
sometimes we're in motion. It's like, oh, we're so busy. We're so busy. But what are we actually accomplishing?
Yeah. Are we making progress? Yeah.
Right.
So do you think a team can have talented people and still fail if they're not aligned?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. There are most of the time in most organizations, people want to come and work hard and do good work. But if they don't understand the expectations, if they don't feel safe in the culture, if they're not allowed to speak up, then you can absolutely fail with amazing and talented staff.
Yeah. I bet you have a story behind that.
I probably have a few stories behind that. I mean, really, and think about the work we do. Sometimes we go in and we're coaching people, and the culture's just not changing because there's some tension somewhere that's going unacknowledged. And then we're basically coaching people to leave the organization because we're giving them the tools and the skills to do what they need to do, but they can't do it in that organization.
Yeah. I think when I contacted you about coming on as my guest on the podcast, I'd mentioned that a lot of my listeners are up and coming leaders. And so let's put you in a position as a consultant now. Imagine someone has just become a supervisor for the very first time and nobody's ever talked to them about this word alignment. Where do you think they
Right.
should start? Or where's a good place for them to start?
Yeah, that's a great question because if they don't have anyone sort of giving them guidance, I would start doing the deep work myself, digging into books, finding professional development. And the key to me to leadership is listening to your people.
Yeah.
So listening to your people, understanding that, in my opinion, your role as a leader is to remove barriers for people and to support them in their role and as a human being. So if that's the only thing you can do is listen, remove barriers, and let your people come as the whole and authentic version of themselves to work, you're going to be ahead of the game probably the most.
Years ago, I worked for an IT company in Canada, actually. And I remember one of the IT managers, leaders, hired an entire staff of everyone who not only was as gifted or perhaps even smarter than he was, but he paid them, each one of them, more than he was himself paid. And
Wow.
when I asked him about that, he said, well, it comes down to who am I? People are going to make me look good if I make them look good. And my only job is to remove the barriers so that they can do their work because they're all smarter than me. So that's
Absolutely. Yeah,
what
I
that
love
was.
that.
Well, and in your consulting or in your work with other organizations, have you seen or what are some of the first warning signs that you notice when a organization or perhaps just a team within that organization is becoming misaligned?
Gossip. Hands
Oh,
down gossip. Gossip and gossip that's tolerated,
yeah.
because when we have gossip, that means that we don't have alignment in our communication and transparency in our communication, so people are going around the water cooler. And if
Yeah.
we don't address that and make the invisible visible, we're saying that, you know what, indirect communication is completely fine here.
Boy, I never even thought of that. That is true. And I've seen that in a lot of organizations I've worked with. Um, and on the opposite side of kind of that question, a lot of young leaders that I've talked to, they assume that alignment means everyone has to agree. Is that actually true?
Absolutely not. And actually, I think the healthiest workplaces have some disagreement, right? Professional disagreement.
Yeah.
Alignment doesn't mean we're all thinking the same, doing the same. It means we brought all of our ideas to the table. We've made a decision and we're all moving forward in the same direction.
Well, and that also lends itself to the fact that even if you don't agree, you're part of the team. So then you go along with that and make it work because the others did agree. So
Absolutely. And you can see when that doesn't happen and people will sabotage or
yeah.
disengage. And that is a sign of an unhealthy culture.
Yeah. And you've mentioned that word culture a few times now. Let me ask you this. You've spent years helping organizations build their culture. What do you think is the biggest misconception that leaders, even young leaders, have about culture and what that really means within an organization?
They think it's like parties or lunches or celebrations where culture is so simple. I years ago met with this researcher at MSU, and she was talking about how she goes in and measures productivity in organizations. And she would go in and measure it, and then she would give the leaders or people who manage people one thing to do, and that was to greet each and every one of their employees every day. And
Oh,
she had a prescribed amount of time, then she would go back in and measure productivity again, and it always went up over 50% because at our our base level, we need to feel seen, valued, and heard as people. And when
yeah.
we don't do the small things like greet people or treat people respectfully, we're saying, "I know you're there. and it doesn't matter to me.
Well, you brought up a thing, and it just made me think of the last few years during the COVID thing.
Hmm.
How could a leader, and I know we're kind of out of that, but some people are still working remotely. How can a leader do what you just advised in a remote work situation where it's not easy to make that hi, how are you? How are you doing conversation?
I think it's interesting because I worked remote before it was cool. Like I didn't go to an office job until I was in my 40s. Like I worked
Uh-huh.
remote from most of my late 20s and 30s. And I had no problem creating relationships with people, but it's when we're remote, we often think everything's transactional. So
Uh,
we're going to hop on a call so that we can accomplish X, Y, and Z. We're going to email, so we can do X, Y, and Z. You can still have conversations and your one-on-ones. You can send a message, hey, good morning, everybody, blah, 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 whatever. And your one-on-ones, you can inquire, hey, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? You can still create relationships. But I think what people have sort of gotten into is I'm only going to talk to you if I need something from you. And
yeah.
transactional relationships are really hard to build good cultures.
That's no, truer words were never spoken from that perspective. Um, you also mentioned, I think, the word civility, or maybe I read it on
Mhm.
some of your bios. How
Yep.
does civility influence organizational performance?
Civility is so important, not just in organizations, but in the world we live in today, right? And
Uh,
civility, it's not just about being nice, it's about letting people be their whole self. It's about acknowledging people. It's about greeting people. It's about giving feedback without othering people or blaming people. The work I do in civility, I really do it at the intersection of civility and emotional intelligence
okay.
because I believe that they go hand in hand. And once you understand the ramifications of incivility on your business, you would run to start building a better culture because you can quantify how much the little everyday cuts impact your bottom line. And so it's the not greeting people, it's the, you know, being on your phone in meetings, it's, multitasking when people are talking to you. Those are the things that really drag a culture down.
Well, and if I recall, you mentioned emotional intelligence. You have to be self-aware before you can sort of give yourself out to the world as well, right?
Absolutely. I don't know how anyone could imagine to know another person if they don't know themselves.
Yeah. Hey, I just thought of something. I remember when you and I knew each other years ago when we first met. I think you were doing something, was it with the football players at MSU in terms
Yep.
of, was it table manners or something? Can you,
Yep. Yep. I
and the,
still
the
do a lot of,
civility came, the civility
yeah,
came up with us. What
I
did you
do a
do?
lot of dining etiquette. And
Oh,
so, the way that I look at etiquette is it is just removing a barrier to belonging. And so that's why I do dining etiquette, networking etiquette, just social etiquette, because when you think about how much we can get in our head when we don't know the rules of engagement, and it is difficult for us to engage with people. I was just talking to a lawyer the other day and she was telling me like her first big business lunch meeting. She's like, I wasn't afraid of talking about the law. I had no idea which fork I was supposed to be using, and it completely impacted the way I showed up.
yeah. Well, I don't think that's being fair. I was a hockey player in my youth. And if
Hmm.
you were trying to teach me which fork to do while I was grabbing the fried chicken, I would probably been in your face. So you worked with football players, right?
Yeah, I worked with the football team. I've worked with the basketball team. Yeah.
Basketball. Oh, good.
Hmm.
Now let's switch topics a little bit and let's talk about accountability a little bit.
Hmm.
Earlier we talked about the fact that sometimes it feels negative if it's not handled correctly. But we also talked about clarity. And what do you think is the relationship perhaps between accountability and clarity?
Right. So accountability and clarity are so connected because if people are not clear on what's expected of them, how can you hold them accountable to to what? What can you hold them accountable to? So our
Yeah.
first job as leaders is to be really clear and then say, and then this is the expectation for everyone. What questions do you have? Or are we aligned on this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Back to I like that lawyer story about not knowing which fork and that it affected how she showed up. I think as an executive or even as a leader, um, leadership presence or executive presence sounds so mysterious.
Yeah.
Do you think that's something you're born with, or is that something that you can truly develop?
I believe you can develop it. I put executive presence, leadership presence under the emotional intelligence bucket,
Yeah.
right? And emotional intelligence is something that you constantly can build. It's not like your IQ. Emotional intelligence, you work on it every day, work on it in the micro moments because you're never going to show up as the best version of yourself when the stakes are high. And so to me, it's about that emotional intelligence piece and really understanding how people are experiencing you and understanding your intentions when you're interacting with people. Oftentimes we get into conversations with people and we don't even really have a desired outcome.
Yeah. So, that's we use that word emotional intelligence a lot, and I think a lot of my young leaders don't. They hear the term emotion, the
Hmm.
EQ, the emotional quotient, and all that stuff, but I'm not sure that they really know how to go about developing that within themselves. And if I were listening to you today as a brand new supervisor or young leader, what's one emotional intelligence habit that you would help me develop immediately?
Self-awareness would be hands down the most important thing.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go to a coach or a workshop. You can just start journaling. You can start asking the people that you know, love, and trust how they experience you. If there's anything that you do that causes, friction in your relationship with them. And if you ask people, they'll give you their honest advice.
Well, and that's here's the point with that though. A lot of people are afraid to ask. They don't wanna necessarily hear the answer.
Right. And that means they really need to work on that self awareness tool. And to me, I got to tell you, Merv, self awareness is so foundationally important because you cannot be your authentic self if you don't know who you are. And being free enough to be your authentic self is, I can't even explain how wonderful it is to just
Yeah.
show up and know who you are and be who you are.
Well, let me ask you, here's a different term. A lot of the organizations before I became a consultant, a lot of them had these 360 evaluations. And
Hmm.
in doing so, part of that was my own evaluate myself. So, have you ever used those tools or do you find them useful? Because I tended to not want to put the things that I'm working on my own evaluation.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that they're valuable if you're open to it, right? So again, you have to be in a space where you're just saying, this is data and I'm just going to accept the data. I'm going to be vulnerable enough to put down what I'm thinking for myself. The rub comes in when folks don't want to know.
Yeah. I think that's gonna be the quote of this particular podcast is, "This is just data."
It's just data,
It's just data.
right?
Pe Yeah, how people look towards you is not your issue, it's their issue, right?
Right.
You can't change how they're thinking unless you change your own behavior. Uh,
Exactly. What people think about me is none of my business, right? That's what I like to say.
yeah,
But as a leader, I'm always open to understanding how people are experiencing me so that I
right.
can make sure that my intent is the same impact, right? Because you can have the right intentions, but the wrong impact.
That's exactly right. Um,
Hmm.
in this day and age, there's a lot of change happening. AI, technology, the economy ebbs and flows and that. So when change is happening as it is today, how does alignment keep people moving together instead of sort of developing this chaotic pulling apart?
Yeah, change is the only constant, and it's the thing that we hate the most, right?
Yeah.
And so it comes down to transparency. I have a client that I work with that has gone through a lot of changes in a short amount of time and has more coming. And I was just working with her yesterday. I'm like, you can't over communicate. You can't over communicate the vision. You can't over communicate that we know that this is going to be challenging. You can't over communicate that we know we're going to make it through to the other side. We're all together on this. We know, how are you feeling about this? That's where you can have that rapid fire change when someone's keeping their eye on the ball, which is the people.
Yeah, that's great advice. One more big question. I think I also warned you that we're going to do some rapid fire at the end.
I love rapid fire.
But just one more question. So imagine every listener in my audience gets promoted tomorrow.
hmm
What do you how would you advise them? What's the one thing they should do during their first 30 days, let's say, to create alignment in their organization and with their teams?
Go have a conversation with every single person that reports to you. Just a getting to know one another. Here's what you can expect from me. Here's what I expect from you. How are you experiencing the organization? Because if you can do that, people know that you're invested in them and that you see them as a human being. And again, for me, when I've gone into organizations as a new person, you can always expect me to be on time. You can always expect me to prioritize our one-on-ones.
Yeah,
You can always expect me to have your back. I'm going to give you all the credit, and I'm going to take all the negative stuff that's never going to fall on you.
right.
Here's what I expect from you,
Yeah.
right? So then we're
Now,
really clear.
and 30 days is probably just the start of that particular exercise.
Absolutely. hmm
Uh, okay, rapid fire. Coffee or tea?
Coffee, but decaf.
Oh, no.
I know. You don't need to
That's
see me on caffeine.
that's like having Coke without the sugar, right?
I know.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning.
Okay, good. You mentioned a book earlier, but what book have you recommended the most to your leadership clients?
Atomic Habits, and then the 5 types of wealth.
Oh, tell me about the 5 types of wealth. Just real.
So he'll bloom. So he goes through, social, time, family, obviously money, and it's just a great book to get you in the right frame of mind for understanding what's important in your life.
Oh, good. Okay.
hmm
We talked about culture earlier. What's the biggest culture killer? You may have answered this, but I'll see if you have a different answer. Biggest culture.
Unaware leaders.
Okay, good. I thought you were going to say gossip again, but unaware leaders is more all encompassing, right?
hmm
Okay, one last one. How's this? If you could wave a magic wand, the Shelley Davis Boyd magic wand, and fix one workplace problem tomorrow, what would it be?
Be on time.
Can I tell my audience you were 5 minutes early for this call?
I was.
I had a boss that used to say, if you're 5 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, Shelley, one of the things that really stood out to me from our conversation today is that our conversation about alignment is that it's not about getting everyone to think in exactly the same way, to think alike. It's about helping everyone move together towards the purpose that you've established as a leader and do that with clarity and trust and accountability, I think is another term we used. And
Yes.
to me, that's a lesson that every new leader, actually every leader needs to hear because nobody hands us a manual. Nobody handed me a manual on how to build a culture or how to create accountability. We usually inherit a culture and then we're expected to improve it. And so before we kind of shut this down, where can people find you if they want to know more about what you offer or just to connect?
Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Shelley Davis Boyd, or you can go to my website, SD and Co, which is ESSDEEANDCO.com.
SDs, Shelley Davis. Oh, okay.
You got it.
Yeah, I got it. All right. We'll make sure that our listeners have that information. And again, thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us. And to everyone
Thank you.
listening, yes, to my audience, remember this leadership is not measured at all by how many people report to you. I can assure you of that. It's measured by how many people move together because of you. And so if today's conversation helped you think differently about alignment or trust or culture, share this episode with another leader who could definitely use it. And so until next time, my friends, lead with purpose because people are always following someone. Make sure that they're glad that they chose to follow you.
If today's conversation added value, make sure you subscribe. And if this episode resonated, please leave a quick review to help other leaders discover the show. And remember, leadership works best when you put people first. Let's lead with purpose, together.